Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. We are going to get started. It's 11 o'clock. I'm Bridget Jones. I'm running things in the background, and I am going to hand it over to Karen Glazier.
Thanks, Bridget. I appreciate it. Welcome, everyone, to the What It Means to Be a Transformational Leader webinar. It's great to have you on our webinar today. I'm Karen Glazier, Senior Director of Marketing and Brand here at Crossviews. And I'm here today with our special guest, Martha Heller. Martha is one of the most widely followed voices on the role of the CIO. She's been a CIO.com contributor since 1999 and was founder of the CIO Executive Council, IDG's professional organization for CIOs. Martha has written 2 books on IT leadership, The CIO Paradox, Battling the Contradictions of IT Leadership, and Be the Business, CIOs in the New Era of IT. She's the CEO of Heller Search Associates, an executive recruiting firm that specializes in IT leadership positions nationwide in all industries. Through all these platforms, Martha has built a large, intellectually engaged network of IT executives, many of whom contribute to her widely read e-newsletter, The Heller Report. And finally, Target Research recently named Martha as a top influencer of US-based CIOs. Welcome, Martha.
Thank you so much, Karen. It is great to be with all of you. And I love doing these audio events where you can see me and I can't see you, because I can imagine that you're just wildly impressed with everything that I'm saying. You're nodding and smiling. So I'm just going to continue along with that fantasy and talk about our agenda for today. So, you know, we're going to talk about transformational IT leadership, and the way I thought I would get at this topic is talk about what companies are looking for in a CIO. So my firm does executive search, and we are predominantly CIO recruiters. And every search that we do has something very specialized that the company needs. Maybe it's supply chain optimization, maybe it's an upgrade of its merchandising system, and we are on the lookout for candidates who bring something specific. But there are also a list of requirements for every CIO search that we do that don't change from search to search, company to company, industry to industry. And I thought the best way to engage with you on this topic of transformational IT leadership was to give you an executive recruiter's perspective on these various attributes, what we always seem to be looking for, and how, when we talk to candidates, we're assessing that skill, what we're listening for. And then what I will also hopefully attempt to do here is showcase some of the transformational leadership activities that I feel best illustrate these attributes that are happening out in the market. So we're going to go through each attribute. I'll tell you as a recruiter what I'm hoping to hear from a qualified candidate, and then also bring up some examples from CIOs who are out in the market who are doing some of these things. So that's what we're going to spend the bulk of our time on. And then I'm just going to offer some career advice. I have been advising CIOs on their careers for 2 decades now, and if you could see me here in this video, you would say, oh, she looks so young. How can that possibly be that she's been doing this for 20 years? But I have. And so I have sort of a potpourri of just pieces of advice for you on your career that I've been collecting all over the years, and I'd like to offer you. And then finally, Bridget is going to lead us in some Q&A. So any questions you've got for me, Bridget will help us to field. So that is our agenda for the day. And so to begin, what are companies looking for in a CIO? Well, the first and most important attribute is transformation. So when I go through a CIO's background and ask them, what did you accomplish? What are you proud of? What I'm listening for is something that is truly transformational. So to take a step back, for a long time, in this country, we were an agrarian economy, right? A long time, we were all farmers. And then sometime around the late 18th, early 19th century, we became an industrial economy. And before you knew it, we had CFOs and boards of directors and hierarchy. And we cared about big teams and moats around our businesses and line siloed departments to foster specialization. Today, we're not in the industrial economy, we're in the digital economy. We've been in the digital economy for a very short time, but I would argue it is as different from the industrial as the industrial was from agrarian, and yet we still have boards of directors and CFOs and hierarchies and lines around our departments. Well, if in the digital economy, every company is becoming a software company where software and data are in your business operations and even in your products in a way they never have been before, we have to drastically rethink the way we run our businesses. So there no longer can be IT is over there and the business is over there and somebody else has responsibility for data. We all must be cyborgs. We all must be part technology, part business, and part data, regardless of what our title is and to whom we report. So when I'm listening for transformation, that's the context. So just to give you an example, and a lot of these examples, I want to be clear, aren't necessarily candidates that I've interviewed because those interviews are confidential. As if I've ever interviewed any of you or ever will, I want to assure you I will not be on a webinar with hundreds of people talking all about our interview. So the examples that I'm going to bring are from my blog on CIO.com, which are public for you to see. So one that just came out on transformational leadership was with Bonnie Smith, who's the CIO of Lear Corporation. She has just put in an entirely new IT operating model, which is a self-service RPA model, and she's going to move on. She started with RPA, and she's going to move on to data visualization and some other technologies where she has put in a essentially internal consulting organization to help business users, the plant managers, develop their own RPA tools. Well, she is helping the business to become their own developers. That's transformational, because in this new economy, we all have to be accountable for some degree of technology development and knowledge ourselves. So that's the kind of thing I'm looking for with transformational leadership. Another way to say it is, it's when you move something from point A to point B, and it is so dramatically transformed. Maybe you've brought in agile development. Maybe you've transformed your infrastructure. But it is somebody would have to work hard to come in and dismantle it. So the number one attribute that I'm looking for is transformational leadership. Now, in terms of what our clients are really looking for, it's a different attribute, and I'll get to that one in a couple of minutes. So business acumen. We know what business acumen is, right? It's understanding how your business makes money and what the drivers are, and thinking business first and technology second. And we've been talking about business acumen among IT leaders for a very long time. But here's how I test for it. When I'm on an interview with a candidate for a CIO role, and I say, so when you got to X company, what was going on? I ask it as a very open-ended question because I want to hear what is their vantage point. How are they thinking about their role and their company's goals? And if they go right to IT and they say, well, systems were outdated, or the IT organization was a mess, or we weren't able to deliver, I think, nope. That business acumen isn't there. So we recently completed a CIO search for a large retail chain, and the winning candidate, when I called him and I said, so when you got to that other retail company, what was going on? And he said, well, we were losing market share to new entrants in the market. We found that our customers still wanted to come to the stores, and so we had to start their journey online, and that's what we did. And as a result of that, we drove revenue up by X%. And I thought, aha. Now I've got that vantage point that I want. And then when I said to him, so what'd you do about it? He got right into systems upgrades and reorganizing IT and putting in data analytics and all of that. So the tech's got to be there for sure, but that business acumen, I know that I've got a check mark next to business acumen when the candidate sounds like a CEO. When if I asked the CEO the same question, I would have gotten a very similar answer. So the next is team development. Team development, to me, what I'm not looking for is I built a great team, right? Because that's the price of entry. Of course you built a great team, right? That's, that any CIO anywhere has to build a great team. What I'm interested in here, and again, it goes back to that larger context of building a business technology enterprise where we are all, business technologists, regardless of what department we're in. What I'm looking for is somebody who has changed the structure in IT, changed the culture of the team, the structure of the team, to be in a co-creation mode. It's not the business had a need and they threw it over to us and we developed a thing and we threw it back. It's my team is now lockstep and with a seamless integration to the business. It's that structural, organizational piece that I'm looking for. So just to give you an example, Jennifer Hartsock is the CIO of Baker Hughes. And by the way, these are all blogs. So if you're interested in any of this, just go type in my name and the CIO's name and you can read all about it. But Jennifer Hartsock at Baker Hughes, she put in a product management culture. So before she had all project managers, and they were very focused on deadlines and whether or not they were coming in under budget and all of that, but they weren't treating their technology solutions as products that had a return on investment, that had markets, that had business capability goals. And so what she did is she changed the entire team. She changed their job titles. She changed, and this is critically important, I'm always on the lookout for this, she changed their compensation structure, right? A compensation plan is a behavioral plan. And so the way to really change your team's business acumen is by starting to compensate them on business goals. So she started with the most strategic functional areas for her business, which were engineering, commercial, and supply chain. She put in product leaders for each area who had full accountability for the life cycle of those capabilities, including taking the capability out of the market when adoption rates dip, like any real product manager, and thereby eliminating some of the proliferation of technologies that give us all our awful legacy. And then each product leader had to present to senior management, not IT management, but supply chain management or what have you, all the technologies in their portfolio, the number of users, the shift in adoption, the need for new capabilities. And she said that suddenly, by doing that, the culture and the orientation of that team was different from, here's a project that the business partner requested. Rather, it became, I am a supply chain leader. I happen to be responsible for technology, but I'm a product leader in supply chain. So when we talk about team development, yeah, I built a team, I hired a bunch of people. Well, sure you did, because that's your job. But what really is the differentiator is I changed the structure so that we are now business technologists rather than a traditional IT organization. Okay, so, strategic thinking. AI test for strategic thinking is not, I had a strategy, I had an idea, because as we all know, ideas are cheap. It's all in the execution. And so what I'm looking for here is the ability to tell me a story where you had an idea, and it didn't even have to be all yours, right? The strategy could be co-creation, right? That's our watchword, is co-creation. But it wasn't just having the business, the vision, and it wasn't just connecting the vision to the business outcome. It's connecting the vision and the business outcome to the day-to-day changes going to take place on the ground for the people who are involved. That's the big idea here, or that's what I'm looking for. It's not just, hey, I had an idea and I got a team together and we executed it. It was, I started out in great detail with a very clear communication plan how this was going to change on the ground. So I'll quote Les Ottolenghi, was until very recently the CIO of Caesars Entertainment. They did a massive transformation at Caesars to have Caesars become a digital digital business, but everything from, architecture, infrastructure to the customer experience. It was quite profound. And here's what he says. From the beginning, you have to be able to articulate your vision, the business outcomes, the end state, and all of the steps that have to happen to get from here to there. This being very clear on the strategy, the most immediate operational change, and the changes that will happen every day. You have to consistently connect the long-term vision to the day-to-day operational changes to the business drivers of the company. That's the story with all that detail that I'm looking to learn during a candidating. So what I had said earlier was transformation to me is the most important attribute, but let's see if you can guess before I go ahead and bring up the next attribute, what the most important attribute is to the my clients, CEOs, COOs, CFOs who are hiring a CIO, particularly if the CIO did not leave of his or her own volition, but was asked to leave. Drum roll, please. Project execution, right? When, for most of the CIO searches we do, something is on fire. So for sure, I'm looking for the skill of saying, oh my gosh, an SAP implementation had gone awry and I came in and saved it. I came in and saved it, right? For sure we want that project savior. We want, I want to hear a story about that, but that again, that's just the price of entry. I want to learn the CIOs that when I get that feeling when I'm talking to a candidate, I think, oh, this is the one. I found the CIO who's going to wind up being the hire. When I sort of get have that moment, it's because the CIO, the candidate, went further than getting a project done, but actually improved the project execution capability of the company. Maybe they went out and got everybody PMI certified. I don't know, but just to give you an example, and this is a blog I'm writing right now, so it's not yet published, but it's with Mark Carlson, who's the CIO of Land O'Lakes. What he did, or is in the process of doing, is he's creating an entirely new bonus structure for his IT organization. Part of the bonus is, did you get the thing executed on time and on budget? But then he's putting in a long-term incentive program where a second half of the project team's bonus is on whether a year later the project is getting the return on the investment or is getting the business benefits. So that means suddenly if I know, wow, a year from now I'm going to get a big chunk of change. If the business is happy with the solution that my team and I delivered, I'm going to be checking in. I'm going to be making little tweaks. I'm going to be concerned about adoption rates, and therefore I am going to be much more connected to the business in that seamless integration. And it's not just going to be, I got it done. I'm going to care about the commercial impact. And by the way, as an aside, what a great talent retention vehicle, right? Because once you got a couple of these long-term incentive bonuses hanging out there, it's significant income, and you're going to stick around. So, and again, that's not the only answer. What Mark is doing at Land O'Lakes, but that's what I'm listening. Not for I saved a project, great. That's the price of entry. It's and when I left that company, or in the company I'm in now, we are all better at project execution as a company. That's the skill that I'm looking for there. Okay, the next one is transparency. So transparency is not I send out a newsletter. Transparency is not I put our budget up on the intranet. When companies tell me, when CEOs tell me, or especially CFOs tell me that they're looking for transparency, they want to understand where the money is going and why. So the way I interpret transparency is turning the people inside your company, your business partners who are consumers of IT, to co-investors, where the decision about dollars spent on technology is happening as close to the business where that value is realized as possible. So, if you think about the way, if you, for your own personal investment portfolio, you can't know whether or not you should invest in emerging markets if you can't see your entire portfolio. And so, how to do this, everybody's got strong opinions, right? If we put all the budget in the P&Ls, then shadow IT will run amok, right? If we don't hold on to the budget ourselves, then we lose control. What about infrastructure investments? How are we supposed to have transparency on that? Those are really about IT. And absolutely, there are pros and cons, and I don't really care when a candidate tells me about precisely what the model that they put in place is. What I want to know is they have created a culture in the business beyond IT where the customers of IT consider themselves co-investors, not just looking out for their own projects and their own departments, but prioritizing investments based on what is company as a whole. When I think about transparency, that's what I have in mind. So, business partnership, right, this is another incredibly important attribute to our clients. They are always saying, the IT has no relationship to the business. IT has no credibility in the business. So, one interview question I ask is, how did you raise the credibility of IT? And what I'm listening for is not, I buddy up to the chief marketing officer, we go out for lunch. Right? Or I sit in on all those meetings, or I'm on the ELT, and so I've got a relationship with all of the other executives. That's important, price of entry. But again, it's how are you restructuring the IT organization so that those business partnerships are happening at every level. So what I'm listening for is a very thoughtful organizational design that says, okay, we've got horizontal owners, let's say, of data analytics and workplace technologies, but then we've got vertical owners of supply chain technologies or marketing technologies or what have you, but it's more than the org design. It's more than writing names in boxes. The other piece of it is when the CIO goes around and pre-sells the organizational structure to all of those business partners, because if the president of Latin American business always calls Joe, just because Mary's name is on a box now doesn't mean that that relationship is going to take hold. So it's the redesign of the organization, but it's also understanding that business partnership requires some care and feeding and some cultivating. And it's that holistic approach to business partnership that, to me, is that winning transformational IT attribute. And, I know a lot of these sort of overlap, but and they're all getting at the same thing, right, which is basically creating a seamless integration between IT and the business, which in our digital age absolutely has to be there, and it is not, because the pace of consumer behavior and the pace of digital technologies coming into the market so wildly outstrips the pace of our ability actually to govern our companies differently. So every executive has got to be chipping away at this in their own way. So communication. Again, if I ever call any of you, which I'm sure I will, about a CIO opportunity, please don't talk to me about your newsletter, that you send out a newsletter. Because, again, do people really read the newsletter? They might, but are they changing their behaviors based on reading the newsletter? Probably not. So, let me just give two examples that of communication that I'm trying to get at here with this attribute. One is, this is Karen Etzkorn, the CIO of Curate Retail Group. So she was finding that her business partners, her CEO, they were not understanding why processes were broken, and were not understanding the need to invest in new systems in order to create seamless processes. So what Karen started to do, and Julie Ragland at Navistar, which I have blogs from both of these folks on this, is use the concept of value streams. So what a value stream could be, supply chain. A value stream could be customer acquisition, or what have you, but it's something that traverses many different departments, many different business processes, and of course, many different systems. So when she introduced the concept of value streams, she used, for example, customer acquisition, and she was able to go to her senior executive team and say, let me walk you through how this company acquires customers. And she was able to point to all of the different systems and processes and departments that that value stream traverses. And she was able to show all the different legacy systems that were in there and how the data wasn't able to be integrated. And she was able to say, not we're going to invest in a new CRM or we're going to invest in this new technology, but rather her request was let's invest this much money and these many teams in customer acquisition. Aha! The CEO, the CFO, they could all get that and get on board. So again, whether you use value streams, there's a million different, communication devices. It's the communication. It's not just, we publish our project queue, again, price of entry. It's we are creating a more knowledgeable business community. For the longest time, we've said, IT, be the business, right? That's my last book, be the business, be the business. But when we're moving into this business technology enterprise where we all need to become, as I've mentioned, cyborgs, where we're all well, that includes the business. It is no longer acceptable for business leaders to not really to know what an API is or to have no idea about microservices, right? For the longest time, the language of business was the language of finance. It still is. And that's why CIOs have worked hard to master it. But the language of business is now the language of technology. And so creating a digitally literate or a technically literate business community, that's to me the key of communication. And by the way, this isn't just so that Heller Search can fill a role. This is, as a citizen of the world, like all of you, if companies don't move fast and get this seamless integration between business and technology right, I think the corporate landscape is going to be wildly different in the next 10 years. So data, I laughed when I wrote this one because it's these four little words, right? Data, which of course is everything, right? Data is changing companies wildly. And, sure, when I talk to CIO candidates about data, they bring up, they put in Hadoop and they put in a data lake and they did all of this. And, again, that's great. And I hope I won't insult anybody here when I say that's just being a tools jockey. Right? You got to hire tools jockeys. You got to get them in your organization. But you yourself, as a transformational IT leader, you're thinking differently about data. And I had a conversation with the CIO of a very, very large CPG company a couple of years ago, and he said, my problem with data isn't the data. We got the big data. We got the social media feeds and the foot traffic and all the unstructured data, and I can serve it up. My problem is that my CEO, my COO, my CFO, they've been running this company for 30 years, and they use 3 metrics to to measure our performance. And I can't remember what they are, but I'm sure you all know the metrics that the KPIs that, have traditionally been used in your business. He said, I can't get them to use the data, right? You can lead an executive to data, but you can't make him use it. And so what I'm looking for when I say data is not, do you have a data ecosystem? Because you better, right? That's the job. It's what are you doing to turn your company into a data-driven business? Because that is the value. So just as an example, I'm writing a blog right now with the CIO of McKinsey, Mike Wright. And he's talking, data, who their consultants are at McKinsey, who's got experts, who's got conflict of interest with new clients, all of that. That's phenomenally important to them. Data is their business. And he's finding that it's hard to get some of the big deal makers, the big consultants to, update their data. So he's putting in tools, and this may sound simple, but pre-population data, so they can just confirm stuff. They don't have to re-enter it. And that can seem, that's minor and tactical, but what he's doing is creating a better data capability, which is less about technology and more about behaviors. So it's the behavioral aspect of data that, to me, is the differentiator on this attribute. Okay, we've got 2 more to go, and then I'm going to move on to my advice for your career. So I would be remiss to talk about attributes for a CIO search if I didn't bring up information security. And obviously, you got to hire a good CISO and get good information security program going. But here, what I'm looking for when I talk about information security with a CIO candidate is, how do they talk to the board about information security? Just saying to the board, we're going to spend what it takes to be secure, that's not going to cut it anymore. The board wants to understand what is the relationship between our investment in information security and our risk profile. And the problem with CISOs, and I know we've got some CISOs in the audience, and we've placed wonderful, wonderful business-oriented CISOs, so I hope I don't insult an entire group of people on this one webinar, but often CISOs are very technical, and they should be, right? You know, network security, security architecture, that's some pretty technical stuff. But the more technical a person, sometimes the less articulate on business issues they are. And so I'm looking for the CIO who has either able to do this him or herself or inculcated this in their CISO to be able to wrap investment language around their information security program so that it makes sense to the board. And then my very last one here is vendor management. And what I will say is this. What vendor management, when we used to, years ago, when we would, have vendor management as an attribute we were looking for in a candidate pool, it was, did you turn around a broken relationship? Did you, hold a vendor's feet to the fire with SLAs? Did you consolidate agreements and knock down the costs? And I'm not saying those things don't matter now. Vendor management is wildly different now. And again, I don't know who's on the line, and I hope I'm not. I know I insult somebody every time, so I should try to stop trying to mitigate that. But a lot of our clients are saying SAP's product line was our roadmap. For years, SAP came out with something new. That was our innovation. Well, a lot of companies are saying, oops, and this is my other sort of big concept for the day, which won't be new to you, where companies sit in the value chain in relationship to their customers is changing. So we've always provided the service in this way, and we've already grown. Well, that may actually, your profitability and success may actually be an enemy to your ability to see that you are going to be disrupted. And so always relying on SAP, I've got a lot of clients now who are saying we need custom development. We're doing things to create, data-based services that are requiring, there's no vendor out there, no big box vendor out there who is able to help us with this. So we're starting to look at these little players. Okay, so you bet a whole new business strategy, customer-facing technologies on a new vendor, a startup, and then Microsoft buys them, and the product line changes, and then before you know it, you don't have them anymore. So vendor management is really partner ecosystem development. And when companies are acquiring software companies where they've never done that before, that ability to almost think of yourself as a VC, investing in new entrants into the market, that is the vendor management of today. So I want to say, Karen and Bridget, worry not. This next piece, I'm going to go super fast because I know I'm at the bottom of my time here. Okay, just some career advice. Keep a log. Regardless of where you are in your career, whenever you do something transformational, it could be I put my little portfolio of applications in the cloud. It could be I started the first cross-functional product team in my company. Keep a log of things that you deem to be transformational. It doesn't mean the entire company changes as a result of your work. It means the area in which that you are responsible for, you have created lasting change, and you actually change something from point A to point B. Keep a log. One, it's great to have those stories ready for when a recruiter calls you or when you're up for a promotion or whatever, but the more you log that, the more you will think of yourself as a transformational leader, and the more you will look for transformational opportunities in your day-to-day job. Two, understand the why. Why am I doing this? Why this solution? How does the money move throughout this company? And where is this solution in that value chain? You make a promise to yourself that you're never just going to build a widget without understanding what the impact on the customer is. Establish an enterprise view. back to this industrial era conversation that I'm having with myself. You know, silos around our departments, right? I care about supply chain. I care about our international businesses. I care about our commercial business. Well, you know, when the entire company is changing because of digital technologies, the notion of looking after your own thing, well, that is completely anathema to data integration, to process standardization, to all of the things that we need. So, you know, as you're managing your think about it this way. It's the enterprise first, my team second, and me third. I may make decisions that are not right for my team. My team may not get the investment that they wanted to do something, but it's better for the enterprise. So adopting an enterprise view is very important. Raise your hand for cross-functional things. If there's an opportunity, if you run supply chain systems and there's an opportunity to go run supply chain, go do it. Those lines are coming down, and the more cross-functional experience you have, the better your career. Know your customer. I mean, I know we know that, but surely your business has customer feedback, NPS, you know, net promoter score, data, all that stuff. The more you, regardless of what function you're in, the more you can speak for the customer, the more valuable your voice in any meeting. Stay sharp on technology. You know, note that on my whole list of attributes, technology depth was not in there anywhere, right? It was all the business skills. Staying sharp on technology no longer means, you know, I'm the best coder in the room. It's more what is coming down the pike in terms of the technology landscape. It's adopting that VC mindset and knowing what your competitors are doing with technology. To me, that's the new deep technologist of the digital era. Bring the outside in. What I mean by, let me just give you a quick example of this. So Craig Richardville is a healthcare CIO, and he knows healthcare very well, has his whole life, so he doesn't go to healthcare CIO conferences. What's he going to learn there? He goes to other industry CIO conferences. So he went to a conference, and he met a CIO who works for like a bedding company, and they were putting sensors, you know, in their pillows, and he thought, oh, sleep apnea. We could here in this healthcare system, this hospital system, start putting sensors in the pillows in our hospital beds, and we're going to help our patients with a whole host of issues. And so they did work together to do a joint venture on that. So, you know, get outside your own industry to get ideas from other places. And then finally, my last comment is know yourself as a leader. Be a student of yourself as a leader. No doubt your company has Myers-Briggs and DISC and all sorts of other profiles, but when I ask a candidate, tell me about your leadership style, and they're like, well, I have an open door, or I empower my team. I think, well, who doesn't? That's boring, right? What I'm interested in is I understand, I have availed myself of the development resources that are available in the market to truly understand who I am as a leader, and I understand my weaknesses as a leader, and here's how I compensate for those. But being a student of yourself as a leader and having a very clear, structured response to who you are as a leader, that's going to come up handy throughout your entire career. So that is my presentation. I am going to move to Q&A. And Bridget, I believe you are going to field some questions, which hopefully we have.
Absolutely. Thank you, Martha. And we definitely do have some audience questions. So the first one I have for you is, if you are a CIO for a Fortune 500 company, in your opinion, what percentage of skills should be technical versus leadership?
90% leadership, 10% technical, and the part that's technical, I mean, obviously you need a good CTO, right? You need somebody running your infrastructure. You need architects, right? But that's all leadership. That's not you being technical. The way I think about technical skills in a Fortune 500 CIO, I think of it as architectural knowledge. I understand what microservices are and the business value that they provide. I understand the proliferation of technologies that are creating legacy drag. I understand cloud technology and why moving to the cloud has its pros and its cons. There definitely needs to be an architectural sensibility. But if you're Fortune 500, it means you got 100, at minimum, you got 100 staff. Leading them and picking the right technologists and the right vendors, that's the more important skill than you yourself being a deep technologist.
Great. And the next question is, do you always target previous CIO experience for CIO hiring, or would you put forward a candidate for a CIO position with relevant transformation, business acumen, and all other skills?
I love that question. So the question is, do they need to be a sitting CIO, or could an up-and-comer become a CIO? And here's the irony of this. Our clients always say, we want a sitting CIO. We want a sitting CIO. Okay? The huge majority of companies hire from without and don't promote internally. So how is it then that if our clients don't want a number two and the companies themselves aren't promoting the number two into the CIO seat, how are CIOs getting their first job, and yet they all have, right? So that's sort of like almost an existential question. And the answer is, we very often present the number two. If we're presenting 5 or 6 candidates, they won't all be first-time CIO candidates. Most will be sitting CIOs. But here's how I think of, and when I pitch to a client, I say, hey, I know he hasn't been a CIO, but you should consider him. And by the way, the last several searches that we've done, it has been the number two who's gotten the job. And the way I sell it is, one, the candidate has to have had some breadth, right? If I've only ever been an infrastructure leader, then that's a hard sell. If I'm a number two and I've only ever been a CISO, that's a hard sell. But if I've got a broad array of applications and I used to be in infrastructure, whatever it is, I'm always looking for the number two to have data and analytics. That's enterprise. So if the number two has a lot of enterprise-wide responsibility, they're going to be a strong candidate. And the way I make the argument, and I tell you that so that you can make this argument on your interviews, is co-creation, agile development, know the business, integrated business technology enterprise. Data is king. This is in the DNA of the up-and-comers, of the next generation. While the current crop of CIOs, for sure, they're wonderful transformational leaders, but they didn't grow up necessarily in our co-creation environment. So I'll say, look, you're going to take a risk on this person because he hasn't or she hasn't had the CIO role, but what you're going to get if the risk pays off is somebody who has the DNA to lead in today's environment. The other thing I would say to the number two is get board exposure. That's critical. Say to your CIO, hey, this project we're going to report on, this approval we want to get, it's my baby, invite me to the board meeting, because that board exposure is a very important attribute in when we present a number two as the CIO for a CIO role.
Excellent. And do you see technology business management playing an important role for CIO transparency, communication, business partnerships, et cetera?
I love technology business management, or TBM. And if people don't know what that is, it's an organization that is a consortium of CIOs who have come together to create a framework so that we're all measuring technology investments in the same way. It's sort of a lingua franca for technology investments. And I have begun to see quite a few companies adopting TBM and really having even people with titles like TBM manager. When I speak with those CIOs who have adopted these TBM principles, they report great success. In fact, I've been a judge on the TBM Awards, where I've seen the applications of the great things that TBM is accomplishing. And what I would say is, absolutely, if you don't have the transparency you want, TBM is a great framework. It is one framework, right? The broader point is, creating an investment management culture. TBM, I believe, is a very powerful vehicle for doing that.
Perfect. And going back to the list of career attributes that you shared, do you have specific advice for reflecting those attributes on a LinkedIn profile?
Ooh, that's a great question. You know, I hate to say it. I would, first of all, get the keywords in there, right? We are in a social media world where data matters. Make sure transformation is in your LinkedIn. Make sure digital is in there. Make sure data is in there. What else should be in there? I would say project management or execution should be in there. So first of all, I would get agile development, put that in. You know, make sure those keywords are in there, and the way. But beyond that, which is almost tactical, when you talk about your experiences, it should be drove 20% revenue increase in the digital business year over year, more than upgraded systems. You know, upgrading systems can be in there, but leading with the business outcome is important, and also restructure the team, change the culture, put cultural change in your LinkedIn profile. So I would say get cultural change in there. You want data, digital, you know, created a data analytics capability for my company. That's an important one. I'd get all that in there. You know, just framing everything you did in the context of these attributes in your LinkedIn profile is what I would do.
Great. And regarding how to be the business, I've been very successful with having my technology teams co-located within the business itself versus having them sit together in an isolated silo. So this, coupled with co-creation models, have blurred the distinction between IT and the business. And the question is, are you seeing this elsewhere?
I am seeing it elsewhere, and I would say, and the person who's posing this question is probably doing this, the extra mile, the last mile of that co-creation is giving them all the same goals. You know, I did an interview with Atticus Tyson, who's the CIO of Intuit, and he said that they were having trouble with billing accuracy, and a corporate goal was improving billing accuracy. So he said to his team, guess what? You're going to be bonused on billing accuracy. And they said, wait a minute, that's not our fault. Marketing isn't putting the information in correctly. The billing systems are up and running. And he said, exactly. Go work side by side with marketing to improve their processes. It doesn't matter that systems are your job and the information is their job. Go get with them and figure out a way to improve billing accuracy overall, and you're going to get paid for it. So regarding co-locating, you know, the idea is you walk into a supply chain meeting and you can't tell who the IT person is because everybody's speaking the same language. What the person who's posing the question is doing, I see that I am seeing that more and more. It's what I'm looking for when I ask about team development. It's creating that the 11th mile is changing the compensation structure so that everybody's rowing the boat in the same direction.
Perfect. And another question for you is, will the CIO be as influential if he or she did not have a seat at the executive table, or in other words, reporting to the CFO? And how would this limit his or her success?
Well, you know, sometimes, believe it or not, sometimes at Heller Search we turn down a search. We say we just can't fill it. And it's when they say, we want somebody who's going to help you use technology to change our business. We need somebody who's going to bring in a whole new ecosystem of vendors because we're moving into, we're starting a new business that leverages data. We're looking for somebody who is going to help drive a huge transformation, not just in IT, but across the entire company. They've got to be really, really good in front of the board and all of that. Oh, and they're going to report to the chief administrative officer. And I think, one, the person you're describing isn't going to take that job. And number two, you're not positioning them well for success. I mean, that was a big part of my first book, The CIO Paradox, is how do you achieve all of this tremendously difficult amount of change when you're not positioned appropriately? So, what I would say is, we have placed many happy CIOs who are successful in their jobs, reporting, say, to a CFO, and they do not sit on the ELT. we have done that many, many times, and those CIOs have lasted and been very happy in those jobs. But the level of transformation that they're being asked to drive is upgrade our systems, drive down our infrastructure costs, help us to get projects executed on time. Those are all happening within the IT organization. Where I would be wary is a huge transformational role where technology is going to change the entire company. That's going to require a tremendous amount of change and peer level change. If you're not at the board, what some CIO said to me, I think it was Dave Foley, the CIO of AstraZeneca, he said, I don't ever want to be in a situation where there's the digital conversation and then the IT conversation. And if the board is talking about digital business, changing the business, and you're not there, how can IT be anything other than an afterthought? At the same time, look, if you like the company and you like the CFO and you like the compensation and you like the team and the culture and the location, take the job. You can have a great job doing that, but if the mandate is a massive amount of executive level change, but you're not positioned in the right place, and you don't see any ability to change that going forward, I would question that opportunity.
Great. So we've got time for one more question, Martha. And the last question is, do you see any value of companies hiring CIOs from a different industry that's not the same than the open role the person is applying for? So moving from one industry and into another.
I do, and we see it all the time. And usually it's when the CEO has said, we are changing our place in the value chain. We are becoming a different kind of company than we've done in the past. We need somebody who comes from a very different industry in order to sort of shake us out of our habits and our mindset and become a different company. So, for example, we did a search for a large healthcare system where they wanted to start thinking of their patients as customers, and what they specifically wanted was somebody from retail, for example. So, the way I would say that for the candidate themselves is, if you're in an industry and you want to get out of an industry, really think about how to consider your industry background as broad as possible. If you've been in telecom, well, that's distributed systems. What other companies have distributed systems? If you've been in a consumer-based company, maybe you've been in retail your whole life, well, what about all those other consumer businesses? So I would just think about how to write your industry experience as broadly as possible. Make sure your resume reads that way. But, we absolutely, I have found pharma likes pharma. Retail likes retail, right? There are definitely some industries that tend to, want to stay right in their own, but then there are a lot of, enlightened CEOs who say, actually, we all know our own industry. We need a CIO who brings us something else.
Excellent. Thank you, Martha, for all the questions.